So hello everybody, it's Steve Bates, the BIA. Welcome to our Brexit webinar for December 2018. We're down to the magic 100 days to Brexit, or 722 days to the end of transition if you believe we're going to get a deal. I'm joined by Laura Collister, who will be the other voice you'll hear on this. So our agenda today is to give you a sense as to where we're at on 100 days to go. We'll touch on negotiations, the UK, what's going on in the EU, and what we've been doing as the BIA. And I think you can see all crystal balls have been melting as a result. We put these up onto the YouTube. If you're interested in looking back, you can see how wrong we were last month. And this was what we focused on last month. Now, sometimes people have said to me that these Brexit webinars you do, Steve, are pretty depressing. And it seems to be tolerance of bad news. And I say that's not true. And then I look back on them, I thought, well, maybe it is true that I haven't been as positive about the background to our sector as I should have been. So this is my reminder to all of us, and particularly to myself, that as with all of revolutions, half of things stay the same and half of things change. And then one of the things that we see in our sector is that in 2018, our sector is fundamentally strong and growing. And we should just remember this as we look into the challenges of Brexit for our sector. We are a resilient entrepreneurial resourceful ecosystem. Brexit is leading to greater UK government investment in science and infrastructure, which is the wellspring from which our sector grows. The pound is making UK assets and services globally attractive. People are doing well as a result of that. Our sector has worked hard on Brexit and is prepared for all outcomes, whether that be a US trade deal or continued EU regulatory alignment. Won't be necessarily straightforward, but we have been working hard on this, and we've been lucky to have a industrial strategy providing a structure for future growth, and this month a sector deal demonstrating the continued attractiveness of the UK as a place for our sector, underpinned by significant investment from UCB and others in the UK life science ecosystem. And as I look to JP Morgan, as I'll go in the new year, I'll remind people that the UK is the world's third global cluster. We have fantastic research, 3 of the top 5 universities for clinical, preclinical and health services. We're a world leader in cell and gene therapy, genomics and AI. And if you put those together, that's where I think the magic mix will come for the businesses of the future. We lead Europe again for life science funding through 2018, and we'll have more on that in our detailed finance report next month. We've got great regulator in the MHRA and a significant ecosystem that is of a size and scale that you see in very few other places in the world, which gives us great reason to be confident and positive, come what may, with Brexit. Now, you can tell it's Christmas because I'm going to endeavour to do some predictions for you. What might we be looking at for next year? And I've tried to boil it down into a very simple slide. I see that there is potentially 4 things that could happen in the first half of next year. That there is a deal and the UK exits the EU in an orderly fashion with a withdrawal period, and we go on to discuss future trade. There's no deal, but the UK crashes out. There's a fudge and things get kicked down the can. The can gets kicked down the road a bit in terms of a delay, or in dynasty terms, we wake up and it was all a bad dream and Brexit doesn't happen. And unusually for me, I am giving you a Steve's analysis prediction as to where I think we might be in early part of next year, and then some of the reasons why. And I'll go into some more detail on this as we go on. So it does look like although the UK will vote on the deal in January, it doesn't look at this moment that there's the parliamentary backing for it. It could do, that's why I think it doesn't look like it. Or there might be a new deal as a result of more talks, and at the moment that's been ruled out by the European Union. So I don't think deal's very likely as we sit here. A no-deal crash out. There'll be lots of talk of this in the papers today and likely for the next month. I still don't think it's that there's the votes for the House of Parliament for this to happen, and I see it hard to get to a position where the UK Parliament doesn't prevent a no-deal crash out. But that doesn't mean to say it won't happen. I'll explain more. If you take the evidence of recent weeks and months, procrastination and and finding a way not to make a decision seems to have been the leitmotif of recent weeks' leadership. And that's why I think the most probable likelihood is that is some fudge, which will lead to more talks, potentially space for a discussion around a second referendum, or potentially a general election. Any of these might be a reason to delay, and I think this is what I am leaning towards. No guarantees on anything, but I think there's a good chance there'll be delay. Could Brexit not happen? Particularly colleagues around the world sometimes ask me this, and colleagues in the European Union also, and I sometimes say, well, it's not impossible, and two things have changed to make this more likely than before. One is that it is possible now legally for the UK to unilaterally withdraw Article 50 under the ECJ ruling. We'll more on that later. And also, I think there's an increased talk of the probability or the possibility of a second referendum. And polling, if you believe it, would lead you to think that there has been a small movement in the direction of let's call the whole thing off rather than doubling down. But again, no promises there. So I'm going to sort of take you through where we might be in terms of this context, but that's where I'm at. So it's not deal, no deal, or no Brexit. I think it's deal, no deal, fudge, or no Brexit. And I think experience leads me to think fudge may be where we go to first. Doesn't mean to say the others won't happen afterwards. Equally, some framing thoughts from me. It's clear now that politicians are only able to get to things in a crisis, so everything will be done at the 11th hour, 11th minute, or the 59th minute of the 11th hour. We've not been able to get a strong understanding of the practicalities of our industry into the political discourse. My nervousness here is that it's easier to table a motion of no confidence in a prime minister and get that result out in a day than it is to change the production process of a pharmaceutical product or organise a clinical trial. And we have a significant disjuncture between the time frames of politicians and time frames of our sector. But and that worryingly leads them to sometimes think that we can do more quickly than we can. Parliament isn't focused on a discussion around the economic future of the country. Yes, there is a good discussion around industrial strategy, but the Brexit debate is a long way away from this. That's why I've written it's no longer the economy stupid after Clinton. And my favourite phrase, Erskine May more important than Theresa May. For those of you who don't follow arcane UK parliamentary procedure, Erskine May is the rule book of the UK Parliament. You have to buy it for £300. It's not online. And it's how Parliament operates. It's essentially the Speaker's handbook. As we've seen with everything from MPs grabbing the mace to the ability to put Henry VIII's powers through Parliament, much of this will depend on how men in tights and wigs and women in tights and wigs will choose to interpret elements of the British Constitution and British parliamentary law. And much of the power as government ceases to be less powerful will depend on Erskine May rather than Theresa May, and therefore odd things that wouldn't normally be parliamentary practice are likely to happen in increasing variety. So we've got to stay conscious of that as we go into the next period. Laura, we have had some clarity through 2018. I've talked about the uncertainty, but maybe you can take us through where we have got to clarity with 100 days to go.
Thank you. So today we've got 100 days to go till Brexit. And then looking back on the webinars that we've done this year, I did a slide for something which looks at what we know in each of the 4 policy areas that we've previously outlined. So trade, people, R&D/funding, and then medicines regulation. And so with the 3 potential possible outcomes of a no deal, a transition, and a future relationship, I've looked through and sort of found this is actually, since the start of the year, this is all new information that we've had about the different scenarios and what it would mean from a UK perspective and what we understand from the UK government. So I put them on the slide because I thought it was helpful to see that actually we have a lot of clarity, especially from the UK government. With no deal, a lot from the EU side is around UK as a third country from day one. So it was just helpful to look and see that there's a lot in there. In terms of the future relationship, whilst there's lots of warm words in the political declaration when it came out, nothing's been agreed and nothing's been signed. So these are intentions, they're not policies. I popped in the statement we put out when the withdrawal agreement and political declaration came out. This was in the last webinar, but just to highlight that what we had said is we've got to avoid no deal, but in terms of the future piece, that the declaration has lots of good things in it, like science and innovation, but as I was just saying, is that it doesn't mean anything until there's a legally binding, workable future framework. In terms of negotiations and where we are, this is, we're obviously stuck around the meaningful vote piece here. I think last time we thought hopefully we would get past this, and this is the BBC slide that I think we've been using for nearly 2 years. But Theresa May went back to the European Council, which was at the end of last week, to talk about withdrawal agreement as agreed with Parliament. And there was the European Council came out with some Brexit conclusions, which basically stated that the withdrawal agreement is not up for renegotiation, though they try to give some reassurances, especially around the backstop, and so that it is temporary if it is triggered, but also that they are really seeking not to trigger it and do want alternatives arrangements. However, they also said that they wanted to step up preparedness, and but did say that they're ready to talk about future relationship as soon as the withdrawal agreement has been signed. Just some key dates as we move into next year. House of Commons is meant to be off until the 7th of January. When it comes back, there's going to be debates that week, which are left over from the withdrawal agreement, and then the week after will be the meaningful vote. If the meaningful vote is defeated, the precedent had been is that government was meant to come up with a plan B within 21 days, which would take them through to the week of the 11th of February, which I haven't put in there, but that is a possible future key date. House of Commons is meant to be on recession the 14th to the 25th of February. If there is issues with a meaningful vote, I'm not sure they'll be away for all that time. And then also 21st and 22nd March is a European Council.
So I'm going to take you through where we're at from a UK perspective. Well, politics is interesting in the UK at the moment. There are party and political splits. The problem's Brexit. The former Attorney General said it's not the leadership that we're getting for the country. It could be led by Archangel Gabriel, but he wouldn't be doing better. It's chaotic with as we go into Christmas, and the focus this week is on increased focus on no deal planning. The meaningful vote process has been delayed, but it will come back, as Laura has said, on the week of the 14th of January. It can be amended, so this is where my point that Erskine May is more important than Theresa May. How the Parliament chooses to decide itself, I think, will happen during the early weeks in January. It could get passed. Nobody thinks that at present, but if it got passed, then we're on for a deal. And that would then be ratified at the European Council on the 22nd of March if it's approved. There was a small matter of the Conservatives deciding to have a no confidence vote in their leader, Theresa May, the Prime Minister. She won it. That means that she can't be challenged for a year, and probably means that it's given the Westminster whips in the House of Commons a sense as to the size of the Conservatives who would put Brexit ahead of party leadership. We've also had an interesting periods of flipping and flopping from the Labour opposition in the last couple of days. Jeremy Corbyn tabled a motion of no confidence in Theresa May. It's not a no confidence motion in the government. There's some internal Labour politics here, which is the Labour Party policy position is that they can only move to support a second referendum if they've tabled a vote of no confidence in the government. I think there is a discussion as to whether Jeremy Corbyn is nervous of doing that because he doesn't actually want to move his own position in his party to a position which is adopted by more of his backbench MPs. and the SNP have also been critical of the gimmick from the Labour leadership on this one. So they could have gone for a no confidence vote in the government. They chose not to, in part perhaps because of internal politics reasons. And again, seem to be no further forward in a clear alternative posture. We shared this slide from the Daily Mail last time round, and as you can see, the only thing that's changed, I think, in terms of what might happen after a meaningful vote is that there won't be a Tory leadership contest in the sense of her challenge as leader of the Conservative Party. She may resign if she lost the vote, but she wouldn't be. There's no formal mechanism for the challenge for her as the leader within the next year. So this is valid, although there's less chance of a leadership contest unless Theresa May chooses to stand aside in the next year. And as you can see, there are a number of ways in which the cookie could crumble, depending a couple of weeks into January. New things that have happened. It's been clear that from an ECJ ruling, European Court of Justice ruling, that UK can withdraw Article 50 if it wants to, so it can take its letter back and stay in the EU, according to the European Court of Justice, which is a legal ruling brought by some Scots. The Prime Minister has ruled it out, but it is an option that is available to whoever is Prime Minister up until the end of March, and this is where I think it will go to the 11th hour. So it has the significance that is a legally available option that may be triggered, which wasn't here last month. And of course, the UK has always had the ability to request a delay to Article 50, which would need to be agreed by all EU members. And this is where it could be agreed by the Council for a number of reasons. Do a new deal, look at time for the UK to hold a second referendum or other things. Any of those things could happen. That's why we remind people of this. In Parliament, the Prime Minister needs 319 votes, and this shows that if you break the UK Parliament down into its constituent parts and then try them add them up to get to 319, it's quite difficult to do it, and that's why we think it's difficult to get a majority for any position in Parliament. There has been talk that what Parliament will do when they come back is hold a vote on each of the options. A Norway-style Brexit, a Canada-style Brexit, Theresa May's deal, no deal, a second referendum, and as you can see, you may get to the position where none of the above win a majority, which may then lead to, oh well, we'll need to ask the people again, and you resolve the question of representative democracy versus direct democracy, which is also one of the things that hangs behind this. So we may or may not see a vote on a deal early in January. What we will see this week is both the UK government and the EU ramping up preparations for no deal, and this will take the form of communications direct to businesses. This may come through your inboxes saying get ready for no deal. There'll be adverts on the radio, but I don't think for our sector there will be anything as detailed or as specific as the technical guidance that you saw in August and September. So I don't expect anything detailed from us, but it'll be sort of think about your business, think about continuity of trade. If we have to do this, you'll think about your import-export routes. The one thing that's new for us is that we have the commitment to with some border experts for a webinar on no deal border planning on the 10th of Jan. Laura will be in charge of people coming to that. So if you're interested and you are moving things through the border, there will be a chance to engage and ask some questions there. We've seen the EU plans announced today. Haven't had a chance to go through it in detail, but there's nothing in it, no mention of health in a quick search. Laura, anything on that one from your perspective? Don't think so, but
no, we mentioned it slightly more detailed in the EU updates.
Okay, we'll come back to that one. So what else has happened in no deal preparations? We've had communications from the Health Secretary, from the Department of Health and Social Care, from Matt Hancock, following up from his letter of August. This was a little over a week ago, where he thanked industry for positive engagement with the medicines supply programme and updated the government's planning assumptions, saying that there would be significant challenges across the short straits, i.e. Dover-Calais, for up to 6 months, that we should continue stockpiling, but this needs to be supplemented with additional actions. And they are looking at sufficient roll-on, roll-off freight capacity and products prioritised on alternative routes. So this was a significant change to the no-deal planning assumptions for our sector, and the letter was communicated. That's also then led to a further survey coming out from the Department to Marketing Authorisation, MAH's marketing authorisation holders, asking them for their information on plans for rerouting, and if you are involved in that process, you should be engaged directly with them. I'd encourage you to participate and engage in the survey, and if you think you should have got it but you haven't, or you've changed job recently, Medicines Contingency Planning at dhsc.gov.uk is the key person to engage with there. And we've seen the Health Secretary talk on the television about some of the plans involving new refrigerated capacity for storing their stockpiled medicines, and we've seen leaks suggesting that there are chartered aeroplanes planned from Maastricht to the UK. That's not an official position. That's a story in the papers. The Health Secretary has also written not only to industry but also to the health sector, and it may be worth you having a look at both of these if you are interested in this, because it asks hospitals, care homes, GPs, and community pharmacists not to stockpile and keep working at their usual level, and not for clinicians not to write longer NHS prescriptions. And it sort of says they'll be watching in case people do change practice. So it's sort of the flip side, the yin and the yang to the stockpiling planning. We obviously put some reaction out to this on the day. Apologies it's so long, but it was. I hope it was useful. I suppose in short order, it was good to see that the work was recognised. It was less detailed than we imagined it might be about what they were going to do next. It's quite difficult to do much of significant change with just 100 days to go, and this is very difficult, and it's been a big challenge, massive challenge, and if delays at the border are longer than previously anticipated, that makes it harder, not shorter, not easier for the sector. So this is publicly available, and I will talk some more about it in a minute. I suppose my sense now, a couple of weeks since this communication came out, is to take a rain check on the no-deal medicine supply. Where are we really at? And there's a little bit in the mix that because there has been some planning in medicines, that we're sort of sorted, and if there was to be a no-deal Brexit, it would be fine in this sector. And I think that's where we are working to try and get to. But I'm not sure that that's exactly where I am as of today. I mean, I'm under no illusion, and this is our public position, that this will be easy or smooth. The challenge of ensuring UK medicine supply through 2019 in a no-deal Brexit has got harder since the planning assumptions have come out. And if you take it in step order, I mean, where we've got to is companies have responded to a survey regarding their plans to stockpile an extra 6 weeks buffer stock in August and September. Most companies are planning to do that stock build after the Christmas period in January and February, and some of that, the refrigerated stock, will go into the fridges that have been commissioned by the government that Matt Hancock has talked about, but aren't yet entirely ready to go. And during the time in which we've been working hard to do this, in 100 days or so, the planning assumption on the border has changed, and we're now being asked to think towards a disruption on the short straits of up to 6 months. My worry is also that stockpiling planning contingency assumes a near normal medicine market operation, i.e. everybody does what they should be doing. But we're seeing from some of the pharmacists, and we'll talk about this in a minute, that they are reporting to changes to how the market is operating. And obviously, if you have changes to how the market's operating, your planning assumptions or your supply needs may also change. And I think this is a factor that's not been quite considered. The government is also at the same time planning and tabling emergency powers in the House of Commons through statutory instruments, SIs, like enabling pharmacists to supply, to substitute to ensure supply, or short stock or short supply to patients if necessary. And I suppose I'm not sure that we've seen all of that, those emergency powers tabled yet, and there may be more to come. And I suppose my question in my mind is, how far are we going from a standard medicines market to a planned economy in our sector? Whilst we're still unclear and we've not been able to advise members on which therapy areas, as a result of the survey, face a supply challenge. So on one level, I think we can be pleased and rightly thanked by the government for having a sector that is ahead of others in terms of our thinking and our planning for this, because patients are at the end of our supply chain. We know the importance of that. But this is because we've been pushing the timeframes that we need to operate in on the government for the best part of 2.5 years. We've been arguing for this for some time, and I think that's why we were lucky to get the guidance that we needed in August rather than later. But it's still a massive challenge, and it's not a job that's done. And I recognise that, and I know that there are many of you who are working hard on this. So it's not all done. We need to keep going. It's a challenge to get to where we planned we would be, and if the goalposts are moving, that makes it an even harder challenge. And I think in a scenario that none of us want, the goalpost moving has meant this is a big challenge that we continue to work on, not sorted, but working hard. And we need help from other parts of the government and across the board to be able to deliver on this. There's a few detailed bits in terms of the Department of Health that have gone on in the last month. So I'm going to take you from the wide picture, if you like, to a couple of pieces of detail. There was a 1-week consultation on proposed amendments on shortage protocols from the DHSC. We pushed back on some of these, concerned that that they are long-term processes in terms of how substitution happens and who does it. We've got a meeting with DHSC officials on the practicalities of this in early January, and we'll stay in touch on this if you're interested in this. We've also seen the government table their statutory instrument on supplementary protection certificates following August medicines regulation technical notice, and we have particular concerns around this paragraph 55 of Article 3 about the number and date of the earliest of any EEA authorisation, the granting of which predates the granting of the UK authorisation. This is about how SPCs operate in a no-deal environment, whether they are tied to the EU timeframes or able to be free. It seems that the government, for cross-government reasons, are committed to tying the start of SPCs in our sector to the date that they are active in the European Union, even in a no-deal scenario. This isn't the position that we wanted. We believe it will increase the likelihood of the UK launches for medicines going into the 2nd or 3rd tier, relegated to the Championship from the Premiership, for those of you who've heard me talk about this in the past. And we think that that's likely to be the ongoing position. I hope that there's an opportunity for a review of this in the light of it, if it was to come to pass, will be available, but a negative thing for the sector. Moving to people, Laura. This document a policy document came out a week or so ago. A couple of webinars ago, we said that there was a missing technical notice. We didn't have clarity on what would happen to EU nationals in the UK if there was a no-deal Brexit. So government has now confirmed that settled status will take place even if there is a no-deal Brexit. There's some slight changes around some of the timing, in that the time frame in which people can apply is slightly shorter, though not substantially shorter. But further details on the government website, which provides guidance for people applying, and then also in the policy paper. And then also on immigration, this is very top line because it's just been published and it's 168 pages, so I've not read it, but the government has just released its immigration white paper. The top
line, which I think is being covered by the papers, is that the intention is that the rules will apply to EU and non-EU migrants in the same way, and it will be a skills-based system. But there will also be some flexibility, especially around areas such as skills. This is also very quickly just highlight governments confirm that UK remain a member of the Common Transit Convention, which basically helps at the borders to get goods across. We have been a member via the EU, but it's now on the government website that this has been confirmed.
So there's technical notices and detailed notices coming thick and fast, and we should expect them to continue to do so. Apologies that we are loading you with so much information. I think on the people front, the last technical notice about EU citizens in the event of a no deal is vital for reassuring staff and is the legal document we all wanted. It's a shame it's taken such a long time to get to this, it is important to, if you've got staff who are concerned, to reassure them with that one. I'm going to take us back to no deal and a couple of points from the Health Select Committee. This is my point in detail about pharmacists being concerned about the consultation, and they've written to the Health Select Committee with their concerns. The key point here is the third bullet point. They've questioned whether substitution alone, which is the point that's in the statutory instrument, would provide the answer to the challenges of medicine supply in a no-deal Brexit, because they don't think it will be easy for them to implement. And they want to do things like relax the NHS terms of service obligation on pharmacists to allow pharmacists to refuse supply if necessary. And what this means is basically if you turned up with a prescription, they don't have to fill it, or they can give you a short number of pills or what have you. Now, the reason I put this in is I think it shows how others in the ecosystem are thinking about the disruption of no deal to our sector. It's not a thing I know very closely, but they are asking for a lot more disruption to normal codes of business than we have hitherto seen. And it was interesting to see that Sarah Wollaston, the chair of the Select Committee, felt so strongly about this in her Twitter that she said that she couldn't remain a member of the Conservative Party if the PM changed her main policy objective to delivering no deal and no transition, because of the harm it would inflict on people when we are so woefully unprepared. So I just think it gives you a flavour of some of the challenges that remain ahead if there is no deal. Another one we've seen from a business, energy and industrial strategy select committee is they did a follow-up inquiry on the impact of Brexit and published their report this week, and they showed that there was a strong consensus from businesses in these sectors that the withdrawal agreement would leave them worse off and less competitive than the status quo of the EU membership, and they concluded that leaving the EU without a deal would have catastrophic consequences and must be avoided. I think this just shows that some of the thinking that we have here is not limited only to our sector, but perhaps is in line with other sectors and parts of the thinking that's gone on. So this is from the last webinar. We expected when we got to the last webinar, we would say, well, look, the vote's either been won or it's lost. This is what these are the areas that we're working in. What I've failed to anticipate here is fudge and delay and kick it down the road. So so just to show we don't always get it right, but we cut this up because this could be where we'll be in the second or third week of January, if there is actually a vote. And you'll see on vote loss we put more no deal preparations, medicines, regulation and borders and people, emergency planning. I think that's probably what we're seeing, and continued political volatility, even though the vote was pulled rather than lost. A couple of bits we thought might be worth thinking about, and we leave it in because probably it's worth thinking about. There will be work to be done for us in terms of the space, and these will be our sort of next ports of call depending on what happens in February. Okay, in terms of the EU, just a couple of quick slides. The European Medicines Agency we always keep an eye on what they're doing. They have reduced the number of essentially authorised medicines that they believe are at risk of supply shortages. So that's where they've got to, and they are expecting to receive a slightly lower number of marketing authorization applications in 19 than 18. I'm wondering whether that's leading to people waiting a while or seeing how things land before launching product in Europe in general. There was an EU no deal planning notice out today, and Laura, you noticed this report yesterday from Bloomberg. The long and the short of it is there's some general stuff around aviation, financial services, customs, road transport, climate policy and people, but nothing that is specific enough to our sector for us to jump up and down about it.
It's a 12-page document, and health isn't mentioned at all.
Thank you.
So in terms of BIA update and what we've been doing, so we had provided a briefing for MPs, basically focusing on the need to avoid a disorderly no-deal Brexit and what our sector's priorities are. We've had a number of ministerial meetings. We've had another EU relationship group. We've had a discussion with the minister around the statutory instruments on SPCs, and Steve and I have been to Washington to talk trade policy with Bio and some of their government contacts as well. In terms of no deal, we continue to work on the MHRA consultation, follow up on the MHRA consultation on the standalone regulator with the MHRA. There's lots around the medicine supply contingency planning program continuing to happen. Also, there will be there's a communications work stream which is bringing others on board. And then just to highlight that in various webinars throughout the year, we've talked about technical notices and no deal prep. I've actually pulled them all together into a presentation, and if any members would like that, just let me know and I can send it to you. The same also goes for any of the slides in the webinar. If you're a member and you'd like the slides, please just let me know. In terms of what we're up to next and what we're starting to do, so we're looking at some joint work with Bio around what the UK-US trade deal parameters could look like, specifically for our sector, and focusing on science and research and collaboration and people. And then we will be ready for the return of Parliament for a week of the 7th of January, which we expect to be very, very busy. Really short summary. So November brought the new stage of Brexit. Obviously, we hoped that would move us on, but we're currently stuck in that stage. There's lots of politics and there's lots of votes, whether it's a no confidence vote or whether it's the meaningful vote, and so the political uncertainty continues. But through all of this, I think we put this slide in every month, so I've put it in for about the last 6 months, is our policy still remains the same, and we will continue focusing on delivering these policy areas.
Thanks, Laura. I think that slide is our one, which is the equivalent of Slade's Christmas songs. We play them every month, just like they play the Slade Christmas songs every year, and I wish it could be Brexit every day. So you've seen business come out today and make these points about the ongoing position in Westminster. Businesses have watched in horror as politicians have focused on factional disputes rather than practical steps that business need to move forward. The lack of progress in Westminster means that the risk of no deal Brexit is rising. With just 100 days to go, the suggestion that no deal can be managed is not a credible proposition. And I think you can see this echoes really what we've been saying for the last couple of weeks. A no deal Brexit would mean the biggest disintegration of complex regulated medicines market across Europe in terms of regulation, cross-border movement of goods, comparative pricing and intellectual property. We encourage, on behalf of patients, all participants to be as prepared as possible for a scenario we really do not want. And we shouldn't be under any illusions this will be easy or smooth. The challenge of ensuring medicine supply through 2019 in a no-deal Brexit scenario is harder this month than last. I think that's sort of where we are at today. But because I'm an optimist, I think it's important that we remember that UK biotech is a resilient, entrepreneurial, resourceful ecosystem. We've got some fantastic companies doing some fantastic stuff. We've got increased investment into the science infrastructure, which we come from. We're selling effectively around the world. The industrial strategy and the sector deals underpin and provide some very useful next stages on important sectors like genomics, biobank, predictive prevention, and others. And we have got the fundamentals in our cluster, which is why global investment into our sector continues. Excellent science and excellent activity, excellent companies growing, it also continues from our sector. Nearly there. It's been a bit of a marathon. Just going to close with any questions. Anybody got any questions, thoughts, comments, or Christmas tunes for us? Some people are suggesting they've lost the sound. I hope that there's a few who can stay with us. If not, I've been talking to myself. Thank you, Alan, for any asking around specific guidance around IVD products. I'm trying to remember from the technical notices which came out in August and September whether there's anything particularly IVD wise. There's nothing in documents that I have seen recently. Let us check and come back to you. If there's anything, we will endeavour to come back to you. Nothing from my perspective. I'm conscious that you probably have Christmas parties and mince pies, but we will share, Eduardo, the slide that you asked for with you offline. Excellent. We're into the Brexit as Christmas carols. Brexit is coming to town. Laura, your favourite?
Oh, I don't have one.
A Brexit of New York. I think at that point I'm going to have to bring this to a close. Otherwise we shall be here all night, and I will start singing, which none of you will want. We do have some fantastic events coming up in the new year. Please, if you've not booked the gala dinner, individual tickets are available, and it really is a fantastic night. The committee summit on Valentine's Day will be excellent. If you're joining us from Scotland, we'd love to see you at our event there at the end of February. Women in Biotech, one of my favourite networks in the BIA, meeting on March the 7th. We'll be in Cambridge on the 13th, and dates for your diary, CEO Investor Forum towards June. If you're not a member and you'd be interested in joining, please, you are the lifeblood of BIA. Enable us to keep doing this. John Cudlick would love to hear from you. And we have gone so far as to put in a date for our next Brexit briefing webinar, Friday the 18th of January, which we believe, on current thinking, might be after what might have happened, which might be a meaningful vote on the 18th of Jan.
We said that last time.
We did say that last time. We'll say it again. We may or may not be right, but I hope you found this a useful process through the year. We'll continue to do it. I appreciate your attendance at this late hour on a Christmas week, your input and insight, and I wish I could have more certainty for you, but I think what we have is a great sector doing its best in difficult contexts, and I hope in some small way what we've been able to share with you has helped you move your business forward, and if not, at least entertained you on a cold winter's evening. Many thanks, and hope to see you next time.